Kyle Pearson had an orc on orc matchup. So let's take a look at his list real quick. We had a Death Killer Wartrike with Super Cyborg Body, Gazgul Traka, Captain Badrook, Mazrod Scragbag, Knob with Wallbanner, Warboss, Warboss, Warboss. A 20-man unit of boys, 2 trucks, a battle wagon, flash kits, 2 units of Gretchen, a 2-man unit of Mega Knobs between Kill Sauce. Hey, shout out to you. 2 5-man units of what we call the Scalpel unit, and then just 1 Warbiker unit. So this is, again, the Sean Naden archetype, but we know he was actually not in America. He was actually in New South Wales. So I'm just showing that there's a different part of the world, and they're still showing that that archetype, the Sean Naden archetype, still works. Do I think I still like the 2 5-man units of Knobs, as we've seen here? Personally, no. Personally, no. Because outside of the WAAAGH, you're not killing what you need to kill for that point cost in trade, unless it's like Power Armored Marine. So I'm still running just a big man unit of Knobs, and I think a lot of people out in America still are too, but I can see why he brought it, because this was a Sean Naden archetype, and he kind of looks like he directly was inspired, we'll say by that, right? So let's look at his matchups real quick, because his very first matchup is these nuts. It was another orc matchup. So we have a Ben Tinker, we have Wartrike, again, Gaz, Captain Badrock, Mazrock, Nobon Smash Squig, Pain Boss, and a War Boss in Mega Armor with Follow Me Lads. A 20-man unit of Beast Snagga Boys with his Pain Boss, 3 trucks, a Battle Wagon, Flash Kits, 2 units of Gretchen, Mega Knobs, another unit of Mega Knobs. A 5-man unit was with the War Boss and Mega Armor, and then a small unit of Squig Hog Boys. I personally do not advise just running a small unit of Squig Hog Boys with the knob on Smash a Squig necessarily, but I know why he did it. He did it because that's getting closer to that point cost where I can run into something that's 185 points, 165 points as a vehicle, aka or a monster, aka Screamer Killer, and possibly punch it out. It's just that when you're leading with that lesser amount of volume, your squigs, your mounts are still wounding on 5s, most monsters and vehicles. For the most part, you're still not getting that exact tool that you need. Kind of how I feel about the 5-man unit of War Boss with Knobs. The Pain Boss, though, with the Beast Snagga Boys, I like that, because instead of paying for the Beast Boss, which is 40 more points so he can get dev wounds and +1 to hit, you pay for the Pain Boss. That way you can absorb a little bit more Overwatch, you can bring some boys back to life, and in reality, Makari is lethal, and their innate rerolls are really what you use to punch out Katans or monsters or any kind of vehicle unit. Therefore, you don't necessarily need the dev wounds. What you need is a little bit more points and a little bit more durability. That way you can actually fit in that full 20-man unit, or whatever, let's say like a 15, 16-man unit. So I actually do like his lists, not terrible by any means. This comes down to who got to play the terrain, who went first was a factor, and how they utilized their transport was a factor. I know Kyle Pearson is actually quite a good player, because we've covered him. It's been several months, but we've covered him before. So I know for a fact that he's actually quite optimal player. A lot of the time when it's an orc on orc matchup, who goes second matters, and the War Boss themselves is also a factor too. So here it was a 62-point win. That was his lowest score, because he was very hesitant, I'm sure, to deal with that. And it's funny because they had like kind of similar lists. So as his second matchup, I actually have notes on this one. So for his second matchup, he lost to Tau. And as you've seen earlier, and we did faction by faction, Tau were actually one of our easier quote-unquote wins. But that really does come down to the mission and how good and proficient the Tau player is, because he knows your army, he knows how to allocate resources, he knows not to throw his whole shooting phase into Maz and waste it, stuff like that, right? So let's take a look at this boy's list, because you already know it's a Triptide. So he has Commander in a Koltar battle suit with the Exemplar of the Kaiyun, Commander Crisis, Commander in Crisis battle suit, and then a Commander in Enforcer battle suit. And then we have a Dark Strider. Don't worry, I have a couple notes here that we're going to look at what these guys actually are. A Breacher Squad, a Breacher Squad, a Breacher Squad, followed by 2 Devilfish, a Crisis battle suit, a Pathfinder unit. This is a version of Infiltrator Scouts. And then, of course, triple Riptide, and then 2 Tetras. That way they can get their sustains a bit off easier, right? So right here, we're going to talk about what the heck is a Dark Strider, right? So let me get closer to this. There we go. So you guys can actually read it. So Dark Strider, little epic hero get. He goes with Pathfinders, which he showed earlier. He gives Jammer Array enemies that are set up within 12, cannot come in 12 inches of this model. So that's pretty much a anti-deep strike reserve capability. And the fact that they have Infiltrate and Scout 7, plus they move 7, means that they're going to take up that corner of the field where you're going to come in from your reserves if they really want to. And they get +1 to their range attacks when add +1 to wound on their range attacks. So this is the Pathfinder team. So the Pathfinder team will bring a couple ion rifles, and then they'll overcharge them if they're intelligent for that damage to -2. And then they have their pulse carbines that are strength 5, so they're getting +1 to wound on you. And then orcs don't have the best armor save, so the fact that you can actually put a little bit of volume into us can be a bit of annoying. But what's more annoying is the grav inhibitor drone that subtracts 2 from the charge rolls, even though it's not accumulative. And this, once per turn, after using a greater good ability, you can select this unit to be observer unit for the second time. So what that really means is that's stacking with Exemplar of the Cayune, because what's happening is he's going to spot that unit, and then they're going to get Exemplar of the Cayune 1 turn earlier, which means they're going to get sustained 6s, and then they're going to get sustained 2 if you're spotted. So that Pathfinder team with that character allows them to find the position, choose to put you down, and then stay just far enough away, just staged enough away that you're not going to reliably charge them, or if they have to, they can use that to move block you too. I don't know exactly how they chose to use it against orcs, but that was the combo that I seen there. The other thing is, let's take a look at these crisis suits, because this is always going to be a factor. Auto moving 6, having good durability and shooting potential with good volume. This is a unit that is definitely devastating if you have a unit of boys and then they're overwatching you. Just because they're going to know that you're where you're going to be going. They're going to take a great line of sight on you, and then they're going to overwatch you and try to dwindle down that unit of boys or snaggers that you have. So because your unit's so big and these guys are so mobile, that they're going to find that. And last but not least is the Riptide, in case you're not familiar with it. So the Riptide is quite cheap, like 165, I think it was on there. Look again. Do not cheap, maybe 185 at the most. 165, right? So the Riptide has twin-linked plasma rifles. Okay, so not many shots, but it has them. Remember, you can get sustained on this army. And then it has the ion accelerators. So a good amount of shots coming from that as well. It can fall back and shoot, even when it's tagged. Typically, you want to tag Tau players, and then, you're stuck. Well, they can fall back and shoot if he has to. Even though he doesn't necessarily have to, because none of these weapons are blast, but it helps if they fall back. And then you can choose to make his weapons devastating, and he ignores all modifiers to his hit roll. So he's still hitting on his normal capability, which is important for him, and his devastating wound potential. So if the Tau player rolls hot enough, he's putting a bunch of 3 damage weapons into you, and that can actually end up swaying the game. Because he scored so well at 84, I'm wondering if the Tau player went second and then just scored at the bottom of the turn by scoring like enough, maybe primary at the end or an enemy outpost, which those crisis suits have the capability to run around the battlefield if you can't engage with them, even if it's only a couple of them, and scoring that late game for you even. So not that surprised by that, because you can almost kill like the entire army, and then the crisis battle suits can run away at the end. And that's the only reason I can think of how he lost that game, to be honest. So his third matchup was against my favorite doggy boys, the Space Wolves, with the Stormlands Assault Force. So we got Bajorn the Fell-Handed, Logar Grimnar, and Stormrider. So he pretty much thinks he's an orc like always. He does his own version of the wall, where I believe he like re-rolls charges, and is it +1 attack? No, I have to look at it again. I'm sure someone else knows, like David. So we have a Wolfguard Battle Leader on Thunderwolf, Wolfguard Battle Leader, and then a Wolfguard Battle Leader on Thunderwolf. 3 of those, and then Wolflord on Thunderwolf, Wolflord on Thunderwolf. We have Assault Intercessors, Eradicators, Infiltrators, Scout, 3 units of Wolfen. Love to see that. Not going against it, but as a person that loves the idea of what Wolfen are, which are essentially just hairy orc boys, that's pretty dope. And then 3 units of Cavalry. You can see he went full into his skew. He didn't really care to have much shooting. The only shooting I would even advise to a Space Marine player that's playing this skew is just bring Eradicator, put him in reserve. You have 2 scouts and then just a couple Wolfen units, because the Wolfen units help deal with the problem that these dudes cannot get through terrain and infantry. So if you're going into this army, just keep in mind that 1, they can turn 1 charge you. So make sure you have your order of your grots in the way or whatever it may be. That way they can absorb the charge. Because mind you, these guys lack guns as a faction so bad. Because they're advancing and such, they're not even going to really shoot you with anything. Wolfen don't have anything worth a gun. I know it shows a gun. Doesn't matter. So really, it's funny because into this faction, whenever I found myself looking at it or playing against it, take your grots, put them in front of everything else, and run your grots at them, run your bikers at them, run your storm boys at them, fill up those lanes, start move blocking them, and then knowing that the Wolfen can be the only thing that can come, you can deal with them as you wish, or even disembark your flash gets earlier and use them as a nasty overwatch when those Wolfen pop their heads out from terrain. So orcs still have the tools to beat that army, but it is still a very formidable army if you do not play it correctly. And then we have his 4th game, which is into Custodian. So the mission, like we always say, matter, but let's take a look at this. We have Blade Champion, Shield Captain, Trajan Valores, Custodian Guard, 2 units of Lars Terminators, 2 units of Warden, Witch Seekers, Cladius Assassin, Evisor Assassin. The only thing that caught me off guard is that they didn't choose to opt into a bigger unit of Terminators. That can be somewhat problematic for orcs as a whole. He only has 2 units of Wardens. That's cool. Let me see what the character. Evasaur, Cladius. Okay, I mean, College Rex is a bit better sometimes for them because they can go with the Guardians, but that's cool. 2 units of Blade Champions, though. I'm not really seen that. I'm not sure if it's worth it. Usually just a straight 3 character seems to be good enough, but this has all the tools that the Custode player can play with. The one thing that I feel like they would miss, though, is the Alaris Terminator. A big brick of Alaris Terminators does help in that Orc matchup for them. So when they don't have it on their list, that's great. And of course, the mission really does come into play greatly. Having a big unit of boys can actually out OC you if you just run onto an objective and not choose to not charge them. A lot of them choosing not to charge Custodes and kill them is a better and smarter way to play them as an Orc player, and hope that they either score poorly on their secondaries or they pick poor secondaries like a fixed or something, like a poor fix that they can actually score. But great job at him, because you've seen Orcs are actually having a hard time with that. Then on his last game, we have again Custody. So we have Blade Champion, Shield Captain, Trajan Valoris, and then Valerian. I know Valerian, he gives an Armor of Contempt, and then he can auto, I think, make a nice 6 or reroll something like that, right? 2 units of Guardians, 2 units, just 1 unit of Alaris Custodians, 3 units of Warden, very impressive, and then the Venatari squad. A bit surprised at the Venatari squad. I personally would be more interested in seeing those points into a larger unit of Custodian Terminators, because the uppy downy movement helps for the fact that they're freaking slow, right? And it also gives a weird kind of like volume of shooting between their grenade launchers, and then they have rerolls against leader characters and vehicles monsters. Oh, he said, I believe Logan reroll hits in melee and charge rolls once per game. I faced them on a list. They put a lot of pressure with the speed and high volume attacks. There we go. That's what it was. I said +1 strength. See, I thought he was an Orc. But yeah, this list is totally fine too. I think they just opted for a bit too many characters, because they already have an issue with like model count and like unit count. You could use all those extra points between Valerian and the Blade Champion for just more units, more Terminators, make it a 5-man unit and then a 2-man unit. That way you can drop would be more difficult. So when you see something like this, understand I really only have to kill, for the most part, the Terminators and these Guardians. And then the rest of it is just walking up to them, getting in the way, hoping that they can't score their secondaries and maneuvering them. And then I would kill the Venatari too if I could. I found that most of the time I can kill them. It's the Wardens that pretty much give you that unkillable feel. But if you're smart enough to throw the Grots up the field, the Death Killer Warstrike up the field, Storm Boys, stuff to get in their way, that definitely affects them greatly. It just, are they smart enough to shoot that away, right? Or do they even have the volume of shots to shoot that away? Which when they last Terminators, they lack that capability. So Kyle Pearson, shout out for the WAAAGH, getting in the top 10 at your GT. Congratulations, going 4-1. I appreciate you. You get